Hey Trottie, and welcome to the One Pod Life podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Pretty good, mate. Pretty good. Thank you for having me on.
That's all right. Thanks for coming on. Now, I've admired you for afar for quite a while. Not to suck up your arse straight away from the get-go, but I've also been quite lucky to
You can keep going. I mean, go as long as you want.
Yeah, okay, I'll keep going. You're dashing. No, I'm joking. No, but yeah, I've been lucky enough to watch you from afar and then obviously get to know you from a work capacity as well. And yeah, I just wanted to say it's great to know you. And yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Of course, mate, a pleasure.
But I'm going to dive straight in. You've worked with the likes of Tiger, Rory, Dustin. Have there been any particular wild requests that have come through to the tour truck that really stand out for you? Like some really random things people wouldn't even really think of that they've come up with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you get into lower end players, and greatest of respect, by the way, like lower end players are great players. Guys who just keep their card. And when you I've done this job all over the world. So when you get out into Asia and stuff, there are guys searching for things that are a little strange. And obviously I've worked through many generations of golf clubs. So just a lot of odd things out there you would see with guys trying to wrap their head around obtaining certain face angles, making the best of the conditions and the workshops they have, not trusting what you're saying, so then going against it a little bit and really like making a golf club that isn't ideal but trying to make it work. And I think with lesser players, that can often be the case, and you go down a rabbit hole that isn't the way to go. But I also understand it from having tried to play a little bit myself. You want every edge that is possible, so you do test these parameters to try and find them. But I think in terms of for the listeners to give a feel for what's the craziest thing you've ever had to do for a tour player that's a recognized name, I know when Jason Day was close to world number one, or was world number one at the time, he basically wanted a speed stick, but he wanted it to be a heavy version, which now you can buy those. Yep. I think there might even be a brand out there called Speed Stick that make the 3 different weights in the red, the green, and the blue, whatever. He wanted one that was a certain gram weight, and it needed to be the shaft that he played. He didn't want just a generic golf shaft, and he took a ton of lead tape and put it on the head, and we epoxied this thing, and it ended up with this big lead ball on the actual shaft that he plays. And right. I mean, I remember handing it to him and being like, Jace, I don't love this idea because you're going to be trying to swing this hard, and I just think it's going to come off. I don't think it's a great idea. And I said, do not swing this around your kids. That was my one thing.
Say, yeah.
And it came off within like 6 swings, and I was like, Jace, this is a shit idea, mate. And it was Colin swatting on the bag, and Colin's a great coach. And I was like, boys, you gotta just not do this. And that was basically one of the weirdest requests we had in the whole time.
Love it. You don't want that lead ball going through a window, do you?
No, exactly.
Or into one of the kids' heads as well. So yeah, no, definitely.
100%.
Look, you said you've been around for a while. Obviously, you've had a fantastic career with TaylorMade, working on tour, shaping equipment for the best people in the world. But how did you get into golf? Because obviously, I know you started as a young lad, obviously trying to become a pro golfer. But at what point did you kind of make that transition to say, okay, I'm going to put those down and actually focus more on working within golf, obviously, as a professional teacher and everything else that you've been doing?
Yeah, that really wasn't. It was kind of a forced decision. I had these aspirations to play. My old man really wanted me to get a qualification. So I ended up doing my British PGA as like a fallback thing. I'd gone to college in the States. I'd left early, hadn't worked out. I'd rushed that decision. Get back to the UK, end up working at the Belfry, which is the home for the British PGA. Started going through that, had a great time, did really well in the course. But before I completed it, I'd been offered a job at TaylorMade, and it was a job on the tour. I did it for about 11 months and then went back to play and got a neck injury, a back injury. Truth is, I think in the back of my mind, I didn't really know if I was good enough. Now, looking back then, I think if I'd have kept going, I might have been good enough, but I didn't give myself enough time for it to marinate. Now, would I have been a Jason Day level of player, as you mentioned his name? No. I'd have been a journeyman at best. Yep. And I don't know. I kind of wish I'd have continued a little bit at some days, but then other days, to what you alluded to, I've had a very nice career to date. and done some amazing things, and they continue, and long they continue, hopefully. So, I can't begrudge those decisions I made. I've learned a ton through TaylorMade Golf, and very thankful for that. But it was really forced upon me because I went to Q school, didn't get through, or got a fringe challenge tour card, very low one. Went to Asian Q school, got sick. And then the guys at TaylorMade were like, we can't just hold this job for you. You were good. You had a good personality. You're a good fitter. We can't just hold it. What are you going to do? And in the end, I pulled the pin. And, I didn't really touch a golf club to play seriously for about 11 years after that. So I had a long break in my 20s. And mentally, it was tough. And it's still tough to play. And I struggle to embrace a lot of the game still. I'm getting better, but it's tough. I struggle to play it for fun, but I'm trying.
No, that's good though, mate. And so when you started working for TaylorMade, was that purely about a gear or equipment role, or was that more about just being on tour and talking to pros from a sort of marketing perspective? Because I guess many people say you work for TaylorMade on tour, but what did that actually entail?
So I set out very early to set goals. I mean, obviously, we've worked together now through Rocket Yard a little bit, and I'm quite goal orientated, and I like to think quite a long way down the line. And where you do that for a big business when you work for TaylorMade, but I was doing it for myself. And I had things in my own career where I wanted to be and big aspirations, always wanted to be in America, always wanted to be like running global tours, always wanted to be doing more than just the fitting. When you got the job for TaylorMade, the primary role in my 20s was really just to fit golf clubs. And I think the thing that people don't see is you're trying to get players into new products. And certainly back in the 2000s, guys didn't want to change. They had a driver that they liked. They didn't want to change. So you would be very manipulative in your approach to try and get these guys to see the benefits of using new product. Now, in turn, those that follow my own channels, you can see that I like data and I like launch monitors. And I think that if you've got data and launch monitors, you can't bullshit. I mean, I've just answered a ton of comments today on my own YouTube channel. And the bottom line is, it's fact. You know what I mean? People are coming in going, oh, well, it's new QI35, CG here. Mate, it's fact. These are facts. So if you have facts and you base your decisions on facts, you're generally always going to be right. When you make your predictions for who's going to win this tournament this next week, which will be Sony at time of recording, if you base it on data, they're facts. If you make your equipment changes, they're facts. So I got very much into that realm, which really suited for where the tour was going at the time, as launch monitors and data and tech were really taking over. Then Mark Brody came in with strokes gained. And, I did a podcast with Kevin Chappell, the PGA Tour player. And as he pretty much said, bottom line is, the best players in the world are using TaylorMade equipment. I don't want to stand on the first tee and be giving up strokes gained because I chose not to use a TaylorMade driver. So all these things really push me down this route. Now, look, if I was brand agnostic, would I still play TaylorMade? I think I definitely would, for a lot of reasons, just knowing how the DNA of the company and how they do stuff, which is why it's been so easy for me to keep developing this career, keep aligned to TaylorMade, and just keep going. They're a company that I very much believe in what they do. And like I alluded to earlier, it's been a good journey for me. And I think it's been beneficial for both parties, but it's been enjoyable. It's been some great things. But that's really how I viewed it. I had a strategy for my own career and I kept on that path.
No, like you said, data is key. It doesn't lie, does it? So, and we're going to get onto a bit of data in a little bit when we talk about your top 5 areas of club fitting that we think people shouldn't be sort of sleeping on. But going back to when you're working on tour, was there a moment where you've worked with a player? You don't need to name the player if you can't or don't want to, but where they've came in with a problem and you solved it by using data and then shaping that club, or whether it be a driver or an iron, and it's made a massive difference. And the player was actually sort of dumbstruck by how well or how much difference the tech and the equipment can actually make.
I think there's countless examples. I think the player being dumbstruck, no, because these guys are on tour. And when you eventually got to the level that I was working at, because even when you get on tour, you don't work with the best of the best at the start. You have to work with the guys who are keeping their card. You have to earn your stripes like everything in life. But at the end, week in, week out, working with the best players in the game, world number ones, major champions, people contending for that, Ryder Cup winners, blah, blah, blah. Is there a time when they've been dumbfounded? No. But I think people started to know the way I did stuff. So whether it was Matt Fitzpatrick and some drivers changes that we made out in China for the World Golf event there, they all came from data. Whether it was Dustin Johnson and putter changes that I'd been involved with over the years, driven by data. Patrick Reed, irons, driven by data. Rory, you do everything driven by data. Scotty, I mean, you could go on and on. Keimer, everything is validated now on tour by data, by the best players in the game, which is why I alluded to my frustrations at the start to say to you that you got some lower end players out on like Asia and stuff, and they'd be making changes that were just plucked out the air, shit ideas that they thought were going to work, that were based on emotion. You're not going to be a great player if you're basing your whole game and decisions about your equipment are on emotion. You're just not the player that we're talking about. And I think that that's when we talk about our golf games. You have to freaking use data, and you have to know. Like I'm reading an old book right now, but the Dave Pelt stuff. I mean, it's from the 90s, but he was a NASA engineer, and everything he writes in there is about data. And it'll be a book that people listening to this won't have heard of because it's flipping 25 years old. And it's his short game Bible and his putting Bible. But everything's fixed around data. If you look at insert in putters, an insert putter with grooves will roll grooves, doesn't have to be an insert. Groove putters will roll more efficiently than anything else. Data. This whole shaft debate on stability of putters, I'm not really dived into that, but I watch Bryson. I've had a lot of conversations with Bryson. Huge respect for that dude. I mean, not only which people who are listening to this maybe connect with, has he changed the face of social media for golf, but in the same breath, every equipment change he makes is data driven. So he's using those 3D printed irons. There'll be data behind why he's using them. And it's easy to see why he's having the success on the social media channels based on the way he lives his whole golf game with data. And I really think, like I say, if you can combine data, natural talent, and the artistry feel of the game, which is the hard part when we get out of the rhythm of playing, then you can be great. And, we obviously communicate a lot over clipped stuff. If you play well, you can move that data. But I do think there's an element where you have to be the artist. And I think that for success, certainly with inside 100 yards and field wedge shots and holding putts and chipping, that can't be data driven. There's a bit of technique in there, but it's got to be feel. Now, your land point on the green and how much the ball needs to be in the air versus the ratio of how much it rolls out for, and the club selection you take, and the bounce based on where you set your hands and your lead arm when it comes to strike. And are you going to land that ball on a flat part versus a side slope versus an upslope? What club selection are you going to make to maybe carry a mound or hit an upslope or a down bank? That is data that can then be put into the artist's mind to hit the golf shot. But you have to be aware of all those things when making your choices about your golf game.
No, 100%. And going back to the three things you said there, I've got one of them, which is data. I've been collecting that. Now I need to become a better golfer and become a bit of artistry on the golf course as well. But I'm working on that one. But,
I think so. I mean, obviously, you and I were involved the other day in a podcast, and the guy in question was talking about meditation, and that really stuck with me. And I think that if you can do it, then I think it enables you to have control in an emotional situation, because golf is an emotional roller coaster. But really, each shot is just a series of decisions. Yes, there's a process to carry out the shot, but it's a series of decisions to pick the right target to then hit that shot under that pressure. And if you're not in a good state to make that decision, then you can't hit a decent golf shot.
No, and you can notice that from if you've had a bad day at work or you woke up in the wrong sort of mood, you go out and play golf, and obviously you make bad decisions because you're not in the right headspace. So if you, like you said, if you can find a way, if it is meditation or any other way, obviously you can explore those and get into that state, then it's fantastic. So yeah, good stuff. We're going to move into the main part of what I want to talk to you about. And obviously I've bugged you for probably months about data. Trottie, why these numbers look like this? What do we do to get to this? And obviously I want to tap into your expertise. You've obviously been around for a while. You've seen every type of player at the top of the game, and you've probably got your own little method into what you're looking for when it comes to club fitting, be it a driver or an iron. I think if we stick with driver, probably easier one for people to understand when it comes to the numbers. And I can dive into some of my numbers, and we can probably talk about that as well. But I want to talk to you about what are the 5 key areas that you think every player, be it an amateur golfer or even a top player, shouldn't be ignoring when it comes to club fitting. A lot of players people go out and buy a club off the shelf, not even think about it, hit it, and think, well, that's just how it is. But obviously, the better you get, you want to get fitted properly, but you might not know what you're looking for. And obviously, you're trusting the fitter to do that. So, in your mind, if we start with number 1, what are the 5 areas that people need to really focus on? And we can dive into numbers and talk about in a bit more detail into each one.
So, would it be a tour player or would it be an amateur?
Let's go with amateur.
So basically what you have to do is you realize everything hits the golf ball. So the face is the number 1 thing when it comes to golf to impact where that ball goes. So there's 5 things easy that I can pick out. The order they come in that I would look at would maybe change given an individual. So I don't know if I can give you them in an order. But the reason I asked that first question, if I'm with a great player, the thing I'll always look at first is the club, and I'll want the club before the player hits. So this is as a fitter, and I will study their golf clubs before they even hit. How thick are the grips? How long is it? What's the lie angle? What's the swing weight, which is the balance point? What's the face angle? What's the loft on the blade? I need to know all those things. Weight in the shaft and the tipping is an added benefit if I can get them. I would start there. Then I will roll into a series of questions for that individual. How much are they prepared to work to get better, or are their goals to maintain a level? But in terms of getting directly to the answer, the things that I listed, and there's 5, and 2 of them can be moved into 1, but I've got launch, spin, attack angle, path, face angle. Now, the order at which they come in changes based on the situation. Path and face angle can be moved into face to path, which then leaves you with peak height and descent. I will look at those things, but my attack angle impacts my peak height, which then impacts my descent. So descent you can get rid of if you want to. Descent is obviously important based on where you are in the world and what altitude you're at, but so is peak height. But then if you're at altitude, spin rate is important, because spin rate, which we mentioned as number 2, impacts how that golf ball is going to stay in the air. Well, then that also then will impact loft, which we talked about with the golf club, because if you're changing loft, you're changing all these things. You change all these things, you change launch. You change launch, you change attack angle. You change attack angle, chances are you change path. You change path, you're going to need to change face angle. So it's not a case of we can go, right, what's this one need to be? Right, what's that one need to be? Right, because if your golf club is set up at D8, well, that thing's going to give you a better smash factor, to give you a number here, than a club that's set up at C9. Providing you hit it out the middle in the correct part of the blade, which is what Tiger always alludes to. He's always trying to hit the club out the correct part of the blade. So when it comes to fitting with a good player, or with any player, what you're trying to do, you're trying to manipulate. 5 is a pretty good number to talk about to make it easy, but really there's 7 or 8 data points, and you can go into 11 or 12. I mean, the full swing has 16. Do I look at all 16? No. But if I get a red flag on one, I'll look at one of the 16 to combine it to fix the error. Is the horizontal side number needed? Not really, but I'll use it if something looks off. So really, it's a combination, but those 5 that I mentioned, with path and face angle being able to move into face to path, that would really give you 4. And then there'd be others that I would add that I would really like to see. But the better you get at fitting, the better you can do with less information. I think one of the blessings of my career is that I started without launch monitors, which was brilliant, because now you can fit kind of off sound with a good player, and also certainly visually. I mean, it's your eyes are your best thing to see the ball flight, and your ears are the second best. And if I could pick one, I'd almost take ears over eyes if I had to tell what's going on.
I
And
remember I
oh,
remember listening to a podcast actually. Just butting quickly there. Sorry, I remember Butch Harmon said that. I think he said those exact words. You can fit people with your eyes or see things with your eyes that a launch monitor might not be able to see. And
definitely.
obviously he grew up without launch monitors. Pretty good coach. I'm not sure he's a good fitter, but he might be. But
My favorite coaches are the older boys for the simple reason that they're not so reliant on the launch monitors, and it's that, you know, my favorite players are that too. And I think Tiger might be one of the last ones out there now that is so that way. But you know, that's my generation at the end of the day. I
yeah,
like all this information. I think if you don't use it well, you can screw yourself up, which I've done for sure, and spun myself in countless roundabouts by playing launch monitor and not playing golf. Just like playing golf and not playing golf course. Just like, you know, that's the game. But that's why we love the game, because there's so many layers to the game. But the bottom line is all those 5 points, again, we can work them into 4, but they all impact what's going on. And then if you start to manipulate length, or if you choose your choice words to tell people to try and get them to change, then, you know, it can really impact those numbers. And if you move one number, then you get some differences. But that then puts us into a conversation like, well, is remote fitting a thing? It is a thing, but on the same note, I think it's better to do it in person, because you can directly impact those numbers in person easier than having to go away, let the player hit. And I think seeing the swing through an on-form video of whatever it may be, it's not as good as being there and seeing how the individual is setting up to it. What tee height are they truly using? What's their process? Are they picking a target? Rather than just, oh, get the video on the hand path and let's go from there. I think that fitting and teaching just online can be quite difficult, because you can't get a gauge for the emotions involved with the individual.
no, 100%. And I guess what I wanted from that as well, I know I said I want you to give me 5, but I think it also shows the importance that you can't just pick something up off the shelf and use it. You need to really dive into your own game. Like you said, how are you hitting the golf ball off the face? And all those different factors that come into it. And I've certainly dived into that over the last year. As I said, I've bugged you for months about it. I like, Trottie, why is my driver coming off at this? And why have I lost this many? Sort of, obviously, we talked about shafts. I got I got the a KBS shaft, and I've got my numbers right in front of me here. I lost 10 yards. And I was like, why am I losing 10 yards? And it was obviously, although in theory, the shafts were the same weight, but obviously one was stiffer, one was not. The tipping was slightly different. And obviously all that impacts how you actually play the game of golf.
I think the thing is, though, mate,
really
just to hit home on this, I think if you take the 5 leading golf shafts out there and you take the 5 leading heads out there, and let's say you put the swing weights the same, you don't know, the heads are going to move differently through the air. So let's say you manage to get the CG what you think is right for you. If it's in a TaylorMade head versus a Ping, or a TaylorMade versus a Callaway, or a TaylorMade versus a Titleist, or whatever, basically those 2 heads, I think, are going to need to be set up differently with a different combination on tipping, swing weight, in order to get the most out of it. I also think once you've dialed it in on the range, for example, I've just got into my QI35. I've played it 3 times on the golf course. Best I've driven it in a long time. Clip data shows an improvement, but it doesn't show that I smashed it amazingly, but it shows an improvement. But the miss for me is launching low with a good amount of spin. Well, that's a straight miss. And the nuke is going great. So to have a straight miss is worth me giving up in other areas for the way I'm driving the golf ball right now. But that's why tour trucks stay out on the tour, because players will change based on where their confidence is at, based on the heat and the conditions, the altitude, the golf course. All these things will change it. Plus, if the swing changes, then it impacts one of those 5 things. If that happens, you've got to stay on top of it. So if you've got a golf shaft that isn't particularly working right now, it doesn't mean it's not going to be right for you down the track. But I'm a big advocate with golf shafts. If you've got one that's working and you like it, don't mess around. Like, let's keep that where it's at, especially if we're going to test heads. Let's just change one thing at a time rather than 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think when I hopefully if I can get a fit in for the new QI35, which I'm hoping I can get done, I'll be taking my 10 shaft that I've got with me and say, this is what I like. Let's put this in the head and see what happens. And
Yeah,
obviously,
and as
we can
long
then
as the
take
swing
numbers
weight is the swing weight's got to be done before you start hitting. Otherwise, it's going to be shite.
Which I now know is D5, so we're good on that one.
D5 on whatever scales you measured it on.
Correct, yeah.
Because it changes on the scales.
Yeah, that is true. Do you know how hard it is to actually find someone that's got swing weight scales?
But how crap is that no one
terrible.
has them? It's awful. So what you have to do is you have to take your clubs to wherever you go, and then whatever swing weight you get on, you always have a calibration club. And then if your D5 driver on the swing weight scale in Oxford comes up at D3 on the swing weight scale in Basingstoke, well, it's 2 swing weights light there, but it's actually D5 on the one you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, mate, it amazes me that amateurs and fitters out there fitting commercially don't do more with swing weight.
No, it's again, you've educated me in that, and it's opened my eyes massively into what you actually need to do. But I think as well, I know it's probably gonna be hard for you to say this, but if you could give someone some low hanging fruit right now, is the one thing you definitely need to get checked with a driver or with irons. What would that tip be right now if you could give one?
I think loft. Make sure, check the loft on all of your irons. What would it be? It'd be swing weight would be answer number one. And let's find out what swing weight you like. But the way equipment is going, 770s, 790s are stronger lofts than what lofts used to be, which in turn doesn't give you any spin. And the way the flighted CGs are, which is a fancy word of saying where the center of gravity location is when in that head, it should launch at an angle that works for the spin rate. You then get into a situation with Tiger and Colin Morikawa and Scotty, the best iron players in the world, and they like to spin at their speed, and this changes based on everyone's speed. But if you take 6,000 spin on a 6-iron, they like to be spinning the spin number 1,000 based on the number on the club. So if you then strengthen the lofts, now bear with me, traditional lofts like 31 on a 6, these 790s, I think, are like 28. So you might think they're going a long way, but they're only spinning at 5,000. Now, providing you're launching it really high, so if you've got 28 degrees on the blade and you can launch it about 21, that's a high launch. You don't want that spinning. But if you're an efficient player, you should be able to launch your irons at half of the loft on the blade. So again, loft, swing weight. If you can know the loft of your irons and you know that your 6-iron's 31 and you can launch that 6-iron at 15.5, that's good. If it's spinning at 6,000 to 6,500 based on the shot shape. So all of a sudden, you need to know swing weight, for the balance point to know it's all matching. But if you can know the loft, you can know through the irons that you got to launch everything at half of that loft. And if that was the only thing you knew with irons, you'd be a decent player. And then you got to know with driver, I need to launch it dependent on how you swing it. Like I'm a handle dragger and I, struggle or back up to try and hit it. If I'm launching driver between 10 and 14, I'm hitting it pretty good. Optimum would be between 13 and 17. And that's where Rory lives. But I ain't Rory McIlroy. And as much as I try to get it in the air more, I back up and move this way. And then that brings in left and right. So the more I accept, cover it with that left shoulder, keep it in the 10 to 12 window, spin it because it's launching low, a little bit on the high side, the 26 to 28. I'd rather be in the fairway at 290 than in my pocket at 300. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. We know what I'm doing tomorrow when we get out on that range.
Loft is everything, basically. Loft.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it hits the ball. It hits the ball. So that's why it's important.
Yeah. Okay. Well, instantly straight away, I'm thinking, mate, I need to check my 8-iron because my 8-iron launch is pretty high, and I'm pretty sure it's more than what a recommended 8-iron, or half of what a recommended 8-iron is. So I'll be
providing you're using, I've tried to stick on old school lofts forever, which is like a 6-iron 31. But I think even now I'm a 6-iron at 30 just because of the way the 770s are, and I combo with the CBs. So I've had to go one strong on everything. But that's okay. If you do that, you just have to compensate with what you're doing. Now, again, very narrow on the way down, very steep, create a lot of spin. So if I do that, then 1 degree less loft ain't killing me. But if you're more of a Steve Stricker and you've got width and you're more of a scooper, you might not want that.
So I've always hit a high ball anyway from day one when I started playing golf. But let's geek out a little bit. So my 8-iron, because I'm a geek and I've got a spreadsheet of all my clubs. 8-iron. So I've got the P730s, which I'm probably not right now, but I'm working with them, and that's set to 39 degrees. The 8-iron.
Okay. So my 8-iron, because you say you're a geek, my 8-iron's changed. Last checked on July 23rd, so a while ago. Mine's at 38. So 39 would be decent.
Yeah. Well, I've not had that checked for a while, so I need to, straight out of this, the first thing I'm doing is finding someone that's got a loft and line machine, and I'm getting those checked.
But you got to go the same loft and line machine every time. What happens if his loft and line machine's on the piss?
Yeah. But again, how hard is it to find a loft and line machine? That's the other thing. I might buy one for myself.
But then you've got to set it up on a flat table. So you've got to spirit level the thing and make sure it's perfect. And then you've got to know that you've calibrated it before you start the correct way. So when I worked in Asia a lot, I would travel with a calibration club from TaylorMade. So I would know what TaylorMade 6131 was, what their length was, what their swing weight was, and then I'd work off the back of that. That was just the only way to do it,
Yeah. And I guess, like you said, as long as you know that is correct in one place, you can then obviously collaborate with the other ones as you go. So that's good advice.
Exactly.
Okay, mate. So obviously, thanks for that insight. I think it's really, really good for the guys to get an understanding. I've said you've been educating me over the last sort of year, so I'm slowly getting there, slowly understand. I still send you stuff and go, Trottie, what the hell does this mean? But we get there.
This is low-lying fruit, though, right? I mean, I know it's a little bit complicated, but it's low-lying fruit. I mean, if we're going to put all this time in, and this is, again, what hit me the other day about the podcast we did with the Dope Stroke guys. You put all this time into getting better, but then you're three-putting, or you're bogeying par fives, or you're making errors based on a target. Jesus, I mean, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to get better, or are we just not trying to get better? Because that makes no sense.
No. Look, let's move into what you're kind of doing right now. So you've moved into the world of YouTube, or social media, shall we say. I won't use the I word because I don't like it. But where I'm going with this is, obviously you've been doing it on tour for a while. You've been in that little space. You've obviously got this knowledge of information that wants to come out. How are you finding your sort of the reception from the audience on what you're trying to do and educate people through? And then what's the ultimate goal with sort of the social media stuff for Trottie Golf?
I think it's a good question. And this first year, which was 2024, going full-time at all this, was very much like, let's dive into a couple of different silos just to see what truly works for me. So I found myself playing in the Good Desert Open. That was great fun. Play with Peter Finch. Can't speak high enough of the bloke. I mean, great guy. Obviously a big influencer and phenomenal guy. Now, what Pete didn't know is that I'm going into that with a very rusty golf game. We did okay. Pete played great. If I'd have played the way I can play, I think we'd have probably won it. Not to be. Fast forward to go and play in the same event in Indiana, and a completely different vibe and not as good. And if I'm honest, and this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, I think it was probably a bit of a money grab for Good. So you start to realize that's how Good run their business. Then you go on and you get closer to the likes of Grant Horvat through TaylorMade and Micah Morris, and you see how they run their business. Grant's a genius when it comes to algorithms and getting views. Brilliant. Then you go into the Barstool world and you see how they run their business. I had the pleasure and privilege to go on a trip with them to Florida. They're some of my favorite guys in that space. Amazing, good time. But again, you see that it's about the content and how they run their business. And obviously it's the turn of a new year and we start to write and think about our goals. And I'm a big one for putting things down on paper, which is now an iPhone. And I literally added one today, and we're at time of recording, something like January the 7th. And I put in here, do the right thing for my business, not everyone else's. And I think that when you ask me about goals for the 2025 and, the word that you allude to, influence it, I don't really like doing it. But there are things I'm getting dragged into that I don't believe in. And I'm getting to the point where if I don't believe in these things, I don't want to do them. And I think it's come to a point where I think my followers that I currently have, can see that, okay, he's doing that because it's either a partnership or they've asked him to do it, and it's a corporate thing. That's one thing. But I'm also finding myself committing to things that just aren't really things that are of interest of me, or I'm at an event that seems very influencery and I don't need to be there, or it's just complete bollocks about golf that isn't what I believe in. And I think that I am going to go more committed to what I like and more committed to what I believe in, whether that is certain teaching philosophies, which I enjoy, or whether it's fitting, which I personally think there's no better fitter out there than myself in certainly this space. And then combining that with the tour history, I think that I can talk about that as long as we want to. I can educate on that. And I think that's really the key area I'm going to go down into 2025, and then try and just do products that I think are fun, but still true to what golf is. And as I move forward into 2026, maybe change some things, change some strategy, but I'm definitely not going to go chasing matches, because that isn't really what I've done. If an opportunity comes to play in something that I want to do, I'll do it. But I'm not going to go chasing the things that I don't believe in. And I think that there's already some great content that I've captured from the TaylorMade shoot that is dialed in and ready to go, that will be so informative for everyone out there to relate to their golf clubs. Because even though you and I back and forth about this and assume it's very easy, it's easy for me because I've been doing it for 25 years. It's not that it's easy for everyone, but there's no one out there club-wise that I couldn't help. And I was at an event last night at Full Swing Simulators, and it was for a bunch of fitters across America, and just multiple guys coming up to me saying that this channel and these things that we're creating are the reason that they've taken career choices. I mean, that's awesome. That's phenomenal. And it means more to me to hear that than to get some BS selfie in some place where you need to be seen.
Well, that's a genuine influence, isn't it? You actually have inspired these guys to go down that route by sharing and presenting them an insight into that world.
The hard part is, though, Lloyd, is that you and sorry to interject, but you're doing this and you are becoming an influencer, is the word. You're becoming an asset to a business. And the reason I made that note today is because I say yes to too many things, and I find myself doing things sometimes with no commercial value to me. And the times I hate that are when it's not a message that I want to give, but there's no commercial gain to me. Like if I'm putting a message out there with my brand and I can get behind the product and I believe in it, fine. But when I'm doing it because I think it's good for a relationship or it's something I want to do, but it's not something I believe in and there's no commercial exchange, they're the things that need to stop, because that's just not doing the right thing for my brand. And that is the goal in 2025. If it's something I don't believe in, I'm simply going to just stop doing it, because especially if there's no benefit involved to help fund the future stuff, because all this stuff costs money. Like putting all this content out, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of money. And you're having to run, and the strains and stresses of running a business, you got to keep on this. And anyone out there that's looking to get into this space, I started very organically and it evolved over time. And now I find myself in the realm I'm in, which is great. And it's a privilege. And I've earned that right to be here. But it's a lot of work to run a business and then keep putting social stuff out there that is relevant. And I think you have to do things that are right for your own growth.
100%. I'm glad I got in. I'm glad I invited you on a podcast before you wrote down that goal on that bit of paper today. No, I'm joking. But no, I think you're right. I think when it comes to all the social media stuff, you need to be authentic and you need to be true to what you are or what you're trying to do. If I look at it from my perspective, yeah, okay, I'd say I've got a healthy following on Instagram. I've just under 8,000 followers, but I don't go chasing for followers or for views or anything. I try and stick to a story of this is what I'm doing to get better. If you like it, great. If you don't, I'm not really that bothered. I'm just putting it out as a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? That's what I'm looking for. I've lost it now. I'll cut this
Just
bit out.
a presence in the space.
Presence in space, or
The thing is,
it's
though,
accountability
mate,
to myself as well. That's the accountability to myself.
But the thing is, you got to ask what you want. If you look at like Grant again, amazing, but he will lean in on trending stuff. He will lean in on.
That's what I was getting to.
But he's freaking brilliant. I mean, what he does is brilliant. Do I love it personally? Do I watch it? No. But what he does is phenomenal. But it's not aimed at me. You know what I mean? I've come at this from a very, very different space. And does he watch my stuff? I wouldn't have thought so. Like, I was with this guy last night, Andre. I'm going to struggle to let me get the name of his thing. I've seen bits of their channel. They were called, they're pretty big. They're doing that Atlanta TGL, St. Andre Golf.
Oh, okay,
Funny,
those guys,
nice guy. I've seen his stuff. To meet him last night was cool, really cool. And I've actually watched bits of his stuff, folks. I think he's quite funny. So, but I think that might be aimed more at the casual golfer, but someone who likes the humor as well, you know? Whereas Grant is very much aimed at the influencery, like kiddie kind of play golf, have fun. I get it. But does phenomenal with it, does phenomenal with players, and he's the right guy for that.
Yeah. No, I think if you can find your lane, just stay in it and just be true to what you want to do. And it doesn't matter if it is like a Grant Horvath doing what he's doing, or yourself sticking to the sort of fitting side of things and doing things that are true to you. I think or even what I'm trying to do, I'm just going to keep posting content that shows, right, how am I going to get better? And that will involve data and equipment and all the other stuff. And if you like it, great. If you don't, then I'm sure you can find someone that you do like. So I think
sure.
Mate, I've kept you long enough. Thank you very much for coming on before you wrote that note in your diary, which is fantastic. Hopefully this is give you some commercial value. But no, it'd be great to just give some guys like I said, those low-hanging fruits of what they should be looking for when it comes to club fitting or even their own clubs and getting stuff checked out, because I feel like there's so many assets to playing golf, and if you don't keep on top of all of them, then obviously you're not doing yourself a justice or service really to give yourself the ability to play best golf. So yeah, hopefully people can take what you said and they can make some changes.
I think as life goes on, you get busier and busier and busier, right? And I think that you have to be accountable. And if you're accountable, then it's easy to see a route to improve.
No, perfect. Cheers, mate.
But, mate, thank you for everything you do. I mean, yourself and Rocket Yard are a big help and have been massive influences to how I've shaped this over the last 12 months. So thank you for all you're doing. And anyone out there who wants your advice, I'd say it's well worth it.
Cheers, mate. I'm looking forward to seeing this TGL. Well, I was just thinking about TGL. It's on tonight, but I'm going to come back to that in a sec. But no, I'm looking forward to seeing all the TaylorMade stuff that we've obviously helped you arrange and get organised, and hopefully when that starts to come out, I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like.
We nailed it. It was good.
While I think about it, TGL, obviously today, I don't want to date this, but obviously we're recording on the 7th of January. TGL starts today. You looking forward to watching it?
I'd actually forgotten it was on. Point number one. I will put it on. I'm interested to see how it goes. I think a lot of people will watch it. I wish them all the best. The PGA Tour can be tricky to deal with, so hopefully this works for them. And the players maintain interest over not just one season, but several seasons, and they reveal their personalities. I think it'll be a big moment in time tonight when that goes on. I think it's great where it's going. Again, demographic-wise, I don't know if it's aimed at myself, my generation, maybe the younger generation, the older generation. I've asked guys I know of both younger and older, and some are excited, some are not. I think it's good that golf's going into the space. I'm very happy for Full Swing. I think they do such a good product. So to see this in that place is amazing for them and should do so well for their business and is well deserved. Let's see. I think like the rest of the Golf Nation out there, I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes.
No, same here. I'm debating if I should stay up till 2:00 or watch the highlights the next day, but we'll see how I get on. But Trottie, thank you very much, mate, for coming on, and good luck. And obviously, like I said, I'll see you in our next call when we start talking stuff about Trottie Golf for 2025.
Top man, thank you.